welcome to our little studio.
Good morning. How are you?
Today we're going to talk about nonverbal communication.
Okay.
It's sometimes, do you agree that it's the subject that usually business people like to talk about?
Most business people don't realize the importance of nonverbal communication in their day-to-day activities, but actually it is quite important when you want to communicate, especially with subordinates or your team, and you want them to be more effective in their work.
Is it more important in private life or business life?
Whew, that's a tough question. It depends. You have to evaluate. I think it's important in all aspects of life equally. I think that would be a fair...
Okay, so what is nonverbal communication?
Nonverbal communication, there's different percentages that people have applied, like Dr. Membran says it represents more than 93% of our communication. There are other experts from the FBI.
Only 7% is
verbal.
words.
It's actual words, yeah. That's according to Dr. Membran from UCLA. There are other experts from the FBI and intelligence community, and they indicate maybe 60% would be more in the ballpark. And a lot of times it depends on the context, the meeting, and what's going on. But it's definitely more than 50% of your message. Yeah, it's very, very important.
Can nonverbal communication go wrong? And
yes, yes, absolutely. You can send the wrong messages. If your body language is not congruent with the message that you're delivering, people will not take you seriously or not trust you or think that you're incompetent, and it definitely gives a wrong message.
Tell us one example immediately.
Well, an easy one would be, for example, if you were to ask me a question, a yes or no question, and I would respond by going like this. You asked me, did you finish the project at work? And I would go, yes, I finished it an hour ago.
It doesn't match.
It doesn't match. That's a very simple clue. But there are other ones that you can learn to observe, and gives you an idea what's going on in the person's mind.
What about hands? Tell us something about hands. What can they tell about us?
Okay, well, the steeple, which you notice I'm doing right now, is considered the most powerful hand gesture that a human being that humans have.
Maybe
Politicians you may see doing them. Typically, if you're going up, it's because a person is speaking. And if we're doing the steeple and we're going in a down position, typically, it's because we're actually listening. But we do this subconsciously. So when I'm feeling very confident about a topic or something we're discussing, you may see a person oftentimes doing a steeple.
Okay.
It expresses that I know what I'm talking about. I feel very strongly what I'm talking about. I'm confident about my message.
I'm going to use this more often.
Compared to if you see somebody grasping their hands or like holding their hands and they're speaking to you, this is actually this actually represents self-restraint.
Oh, really?
It actually is showing that you're trying to control yourself. In fact, if you depending where the hands are on the table, for example, if you were to come into a coworker's office to speak to and they have their hands like you are, it basically means that I would interpret it as maybe you have other things to do right now. You're maybe not really interested in what I have to say. Focused. Or you don't want to talk about that topic particularly. It's actually a defense mechanism like this.
Oh, okay. Okay, let me think about it. How am I sitting and what am I doing? And what about eyes?
Eyes say a lot. Eyes, probably the two most expressive gestures we have on our body are both the eyes and the hands.
Eyes and hands, okay.
Eyes, everything from the dilation of the pupil gives you a lot of information about how the person is feeling. So typically, a dilated pupil can be something as simple as there's not enough light in the room. Keep in mind, pupil dilation is controlled by the limbic system of the brain. So a lot of these gestures and behaviors are automatic, and we actually can't control them. They come from the primitive brain, and we just do them automatically. So a dilated pupil can mean there's not enough light in the room. Therefore, that's where the term comes from, bedroom eyes.
Bedroom eyes, okay.
Also, our eyes tend to dilate when we like something or someone. So if we're attracted to someone, our eyes will dilate. Or perhaps if we like something, an example being, let's say I haven't eaten all day, and I come to your house, Dolores, and there's a great meal sitting on the table, you probably would see my pupils dilate a lot. Because I'm hungry and the food looks appetizing.
Oh, we can look like that to the people that are coming in our house, right? We can see are they hungry or not. Just put something on the table and look in their eyes.
Exactly.
Okay, and what about legs?
Legs and feet, they also share with us a lot of information. We're pretty good usually lying with our faces because we're trained from a very young age to lie. You know, you'll hear people say, don't put on that face. From age 2, our parents are teaching us basically, not intentionally, but they're teaching us how to lie with our face. So human beings were very good at this.
That's so true. Unfortunately.
But with the feet, nobody teaches us to lie.
Okay. So what can they tell us?
Well, depending on the context, if we're really feeling energetic and positive and happy, you'll see a lot of what experts say are called gravity-defying behaviors, whereby maybe you'll see the toe pointed upwards. And this is a sign of somebody feeling happy or feeling receive some good news or something of that nature. Now, also interesting on the feet will tend to point in the direction that they want to go. So if you go into a bar or a social setting, you'll see people that may be of the opposite sex where they're attracted to one another, and you watch where the feet are pointing.
Okay. I've never thought about that before. Can you tell us some tips? How can we see that people are lying to us?
Lying is...
it's a big subject.
It's a big subject, and it's a complicated subject. There's no one single gesture that indicates somebody is lying. But I'll try to explain it to you as it's a full study, actually, of lying. The common myth is, for example, if somebody says something, they touch their nose, the Pinocchio effect, it's called, and you're lying.
Pinocchio effect.
Right. There's no scientific evidence that backs that up. That's false. But what is true is when a human being experiences a stressful event or is asked a stressful question, they will normally use a pacifying gesture. A pacifying gesture is something that pacifies us to make us relax. Pacifier coming from when we were children, and we would use a pacifier. That's where the term comes from. So perhaps you may ask me a question that I'm not comfortable asking, like answering. You ask me a question I'm not comfortable answering, and I may touch my neck, which is a common thing that men do, right?
Yeah.
This is a pacifying behavior. Now that doesn't mean I'm lying. It just means that I'm a little bit stressed by the question. Or face touching would be any sort of face touching, hair scratching.
Hair like this.
Any sort of out of the ordinary behavior. So, for example, police, when they go to interrogate a suspect for a criminal case, they usually try to first get an idea of what they call the baseline. The baseline is a person's normal behaviors or normal compulsive behaviors or normal tics that they have. And these behaviors are things that they do day to day. So these behaviors you discount. An example would be somebody who consistently is biting their nails. And you ask them a question and they bite their nails. Well, you really wouldn't take into account the biting of the nails. Okay? But maybe you ask them, did you finish the report? They shift their whole body. The voice tonality changes, and you may be some other gesture that you'll notice that's out of context, out of the ordinary, and that'll tell you that there's an issue with that question.
Yeah, wow, you're a tough boss then.
No.
You can read everything from people's behavior. But what about the poker face? What can we find? How can we find out that somebody's using a poker face?
Well, I think the best thing is measuring that. You need to be very observant. So when you ask somebody a question, there's about 30 or 40 different points of interest on the human body that we would watch. So the eyes are one, the pupil dilation, because that's something somebody can't control. Whether they're smiling, not smiling, whatever, with the exception of micro expressions, we wouldn't pay a lot of attention to the face. I would probably pay more attention to your feet, to your hands, and I probably would be looking for micro expressions. So you have signals, for example, of disgust, sadness, happiness, anger, surprise, fear. These are all expressions that we give in the face, but they happen very, very quickly. So the way to read these is first knowing what they look like, but they happen very quickly. They're a flash within maybe a 20th of a second. So I ask you a question, I watch very, very carefully, and your first reaction you won't be able to control, but it'll be that fast.
In second.
Exactly. So maybe I ask you the question and there's a flash of surprise. And I say, there's only a 20th of a second. I see that, so I know you're surprised by the question. Now, if I were to tell you something and I see a flash of anger, typically, that would mean that I'm preventing you from doing something that you want to do. So as a manager, I would know, so this person was planning to do some other activity. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, John, tell us about dating now.
Dating?
Yes.
Who wants to date?
Good. Could things go wrong?
When dating, yeah, of course. I mean, it's very important when you're with another person, whether it be a couple, professional, family, mother, whatever, to listen. And that's one of the things that we as human beings don't do. I love always saying that, when we were born with 2 ears
and one mouth.
And why is that? Because probably we should listen twice as much as we speak. So it's really important to listen. But listening is not just listening. Listening is also observing. So when you're going on a date, and are you talking about a first date or?
Oh, tell me everything about first date.
About the first date? There's really
first date first.
First date. It's very important to listen. Listen both what the people are saying, but also listen to observing their body language because you're looking for congruencies, or actually you're looking for incongruencies of what their body language is saying, their micro expressions, and the words that they're speaking. This is really important. And as I mentioned earlier, eye dilation is an important element as well. But always keep in mind, if it's a dark restaurant with candlelights and all that, the pupil will dilate because of the light. So there you won't necessarily be getting a fair
erase that
assessment.
tip in your head.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
And the second date?
The second
or
date,
later?
Later on, it's probably even more important to learn to listen because it's a habit. When people argue, a lot of times it's like one person's trying to speak before the other person goes, and it's going back and forth.
It's so often.
Very, very much so, unfortunately. And what I found from experience that I can diffuse problems. I do it all. Actually, I use it a lot, and it's really interesting. Because what I do is whatever the person says, whatever they say, I say, yes, you're right, I understand. And
that's a tip for good marriage also, right?
Well, it's not that you agree with what they're saying, but you agree with what you're acknowledging that you've heard what they say. Okay. And you'll see their faces typically go, because you don't want to argue with them, they don't know what to do. And then I go, and da 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 da, whatever the other point is that I want to insert. I let them finish their spiel, and I sit there and I smile, and you nod, and you let them continue, and let them get it off their chest. Sometimes that's enough.
You will find out.
And then they relax, and it's okay sometimes. Other tips that we can use to diffuse if you're having, I guess we're talking about arguing now, is lowering your tone of voice. So we start arguing, you get louder, I get louder, or you get louder, I get louder, and it escalates.
Yeah.
To stop that, we do the opposite. You start getting louder and upset and excited. What I should do is lower my voice, speak more slowly, and even tip my head at an angle, which I'm exposing my neck, which non-verbally is communicating to you that I'm vulnerable, I'm open to you. Because think about it, you have veins going through the neck, jugular, and you're exposing those to the person.
Oh, that's so
it's a trick.
Thing.
And but it works. Trick. It works.
So first tip is listen to person, nod.
Not nodding. No, the first thing I would say is nodding.
Nodding.
So when the person's speaking, you're nodding, like yes, I understand.
Lower your voice if there's some argue, and neck. Okay, that's 4 things that you told us.
Right. So you would nod, and as you're listening to the person, you're not nodding in agreement. You're nodding that you understand.
Of course, that's different.
So you're listening and not nodding. If it's appropriate, smile. If not appropriate, don't smile. Depending you always have to look at the context and the situation. Okay. Then we would lower our voices, speak slowly when we answer, and maybe tilt the neck a little bit, exposing the jugular vein.
Okay. And what about hair? Girls are doing usually something with hair if they're nervous, or are they nervous or?
Well, could be. If a girl likes a boy, a lot of times she'll twirl her hair. Women tend to expose their necks to men by pulling the hair back as your hair is there. To actually, what they say is for the pheromones. And men usually find the neck of ladies to be attractive, and that's why ladies tend to do that when they like a potential
feet.
mate. And the feet will tend to point towards the individual that they find attractive, or it could be either attractive or that they're interested in speaking to. Okay. So it doesn't have to be necessarily with the feet a sexual attraction. It could be just a friendship or an interest in a professional interest.
They're focused on the conversation they're having. Okay.
Right. So
they're not somewhere else.
Yeah, exactly. The feet will be pointing towards what I'm interested in.
Okay.
So if I'm interested in going to the bathroom, you can be almost for certain one of my feet will be pointing towards the loo.
Oh, really? Really?
Or the exit. If I want to go, for sure, at least one of the feet will be pointing towards the door.
Okay. Let's talk about business. Like, if you want to close some deal,
right.
What is like tips for doing it the best way?
The best way to close a deal? Well, it's really critical when we're dealing with a client or a potential client, let's say, that we understand very clearly what the client's needs are, and that we've done a study of what the client's...
Like with dating, we have to listen.
Exactly. Exactly, 100%. All human interaction is really, really critical to listen, because that's where we get our information about about what's bothering the person, or what the person needs, or what the person's concerns are, or the person's
what
objectives.
we should say next.
Exactly.
Okay, so first thing is listening again.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And listening carefully to what the person's saying. So we would do some preliminary. We would investigate what our clients' needs are, their industry. We find out what their problems are, and we would find out how we can solve these problems for the client, provided that we are offering a solution that the client feels will solve his problems.
And usually we should sit like this, right?
Well, actually, sitting directly across as you're doing, I don't recommend, because it's a confrontational thing. So even with job interviews and things like that, I usually suggest to people, including myself, if I'm speaking with a new potential client, I avoid sitting across from them. Sometimes you can't avoid it because they're behind the desk.
But HR are usually doing that.
Right, but I usually, if I'm going into an environment and I can in any way influence the seating arrangement.
Let's go back.
It's
a bit.
The ideal is to sit at an angle. So if you were sitting there and you were HR or potential client for me, I would sit actually next to you. Because of the confrontational angle. You may see people, they may be a little surprised by that, but a lot of times they'll get away, people will step away from their desk and go to a table to go sit at. So you have kind of a choice where to sit. Try to sit at an angle from the person, if possible.
If possible.
Because
if we can choose.
It puts it more on a more personal, more relaxed basis. Sitting across can be confrontational, so I try to avoid that when possible. Okay,
so the audience and two of us, it's a good angle for a talk, right?
Yeah.
We're not
confrontational, no. Also because we're working in a studio, we're on a camera and all these sorts of things, so it's a little bit different, the scenario. But if we were actually just having a conversation over coffee, I would have you actually sitting probably here, and I would be here.
Okay, perfect. What else should we know about having a good deal, a good business deal? Eyes or smile or no, yes?
Well, I think if you're negotiating in business, that it's really worthwhile taking a course on learning micro-expressions. The reason being is you will learn, when you ask a question or make a comment, you'll be able to get you'll be able to obtain greater insight into how the person really feels about that comment. Because again, remember, people have the poker face, so they'll try to, they may not like the idea, or they may love the idea, and you have no idea based on the face. But if you're able to read the micro-expression, the flash that they will project initially, that's very quick, that'll give you some insight as whether the person likes the idea, they were surprised by the idea, they don't like the idea, so there was anger, they're disgusted by the idea, they find the idea contemptible, whatever. But it'll give you some idea where you stand.
And on the table, we shouldn't have this between us, right?
Yeah, definitely you don't want to have barriers between you.
Barriers, okay. No flowers, no nothing, right?
I would avoid it, yeah, because it's like a barrier between us. It's the same thing when we're speaking. If I'm putting my hands in front of me like this, it's a barrier between us.
It is from the start.
Yes. If you cross your arms, now it could be that I'm cold, and that's why I'm crossing my arms. Yeah? It could be this is a normal posture for my personality type, and this is just what I normally do. Most people don't. So if I'm crossing my arms again, it's a barrier between you and I, right? Okay, now here's another one.
Do that.
You should try to avoid it as much as possible. Now, if you're cold, and again, the context and the situation we should look at. One more thing to keep in mind, when you're crossing your arms, ladies will do this a lot of times when they're speaking to you, and they open with one arm while they're talking, they keep one arm crossed and they're talking like this. This is actually the process of breaking the ice and opening up.
Okay.
You won't see men do this very often.
Men would do this. They will
men will, they'll do this. If they have the fist clenched like this, this is a very aggressive sort of defensive position, yeah. If the hands are open, a little bit less.
Okay. It's also not good for business.
Yeah, you definitely want to avoid it. You want to try to keep your arms open, and even keep your hands visible, because it shows that you're not hiding anything. Again, it's not really possible to apply all these body gestures to lie and to manipulate people, because you can't control what I'm thinking, what I'm going to tell you, my facial expressions, my body position.
I wanted to say, is it a big job to do that?
It's not. It's really not possible.
It's impossible.
Something will leak out. Some of the truth will leak out. You just won't be able to do it. So that's a good thing. So that means that people they can't really use this information to try to manipulate. They can try to use it to manipulate, but they won't be 100% successful. But what they will gain, what they will gain is they will be able to read others much more effectively and know what people are really feeling and thinking about them. Louis XIV was famous for sneaking up behind the other nobles. They wouldn't realize the king was coming. He'd come behind them, maybe tap them on the shoulder, and just to see their initial reaction when they saw his face, to get an idea whether they were loyal to him, whether they liked him, or they had hostility towards him, or what their feelings were towards him.
No, he was smart.
He's quite smart, huh?
Quite smart.
Of course, he was a king, huh?
Okay, thank you, John.
Hey, it's a pleasure. Thank you very much.
I'm sorry, I forgot to ask you about handshaking.
Okay.
How can we use it on a good way?
Okay, handshaking is really important as well. You keep in mind that on our fingertips we have a lot of nerves, and those are connected directly to the brain. So when you first meet somebody, this will be part of the first impression that you'll have with somebody. So it's really important when you shake somebody's hand to calibrate. So one is you don't want to crush the person's hand.
Yeah.
You want to avoid that.
But you don't want to be weak.
Yeah, you don't want to have that nice to meet you kind of thing. You should calibrate, meaning the handshake should be about the same pressure as the other person. And you should look the person in the eyes. You should smile.
And you should feel the person.
Right, and it should make them it should make I'm happy to be here and I'm happy to meet you.
Yeah.
That's the impression you want to give the person, so that the person feels people will. There's a famous saying that people will not remember what you said, but they will remember how you made them feel.
Thank you. You gave us a lot to think about and to work on our brains to be better in communication. And I would say in the end, 93% is nonverbal communication.
I would say 60 to 93%.
60 to 93%.
Depending on the context and the situation.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you for watching us.
Thank you.